Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's broadcast. It is the Monday, June 8th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Hope everyone had a great weekend and are ready to get back into the swing of things. And what in the wide world of politics is going on here? On Saturday, we had the press release information that Israel is spying on President Trump. I mean, no surprise there at all. They've always been spying on the United States for what, the last 70 years? Then yesterday, Israel defies its ceasefire with Lebanon and begins bombing in the suburb of Dahia, just right outside of Beirut, killing 2 people. Iran holds true to its word and then sends a barrage of missiles into northern Israel, and the two exchange fire with each other. President Trump walks off during an interview with Kirsten Welker with Meet the Press. I mean, it was a fun-packed weekend, folks, just to say the least. And then we had the painstakingly vote counting, or vote getting, I should say, depending on how you look at it, with the LA mayoral race. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But more importantly, I've got to tell you, the 82nd anniversary of the D-Day invasion was this past Saturday, where we had 57,500 of our brave boys, along with 75,000 Canadian and British soldiers alike, storming the beaches of Normandy in France, and of course marking our entrance into the Western Front of World War II. You know, over the weekend I was watching a video, and this was from about 7 years ago, 2019. A then 97-year-old veteran parachuted on the beaches that night before on the D-Day invasion, as the other parachuters did, and decided to give it one last go and went skydiving on that day, June 6, 2019. And I can't even imagine doing that right now, let alone at 97. But nonetheless, it's not because I'm afraid of heights or I get motion sickness or anything like that. I just can't imagine putting all of my trust into someone else with something as serious as jumping out of a plane and bringing us down like that. And again, you don't have a second chance once you jump. So, I always have that in the back of my head there. But the hang time has got to be what gets you. I mean, just there, you're falling, but you're just kind of like frozen in time, it seems. You're free falling at 54 meters per second, which comes out to about 120 miles per hour. But that hang time has just got to get you. The view's got to be amazing, though. And you hit the ground hard, though. Even with a parachute, you hit the ground fairly hard. You've got to be ready to embrace that impact. But hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Anyways, God bless that man, and of course, all the soldiers that were there on that day. Obviously, we've seen depictions of that in Saving Private Ryan, and certainly it was nothing to be obviously glorious in terms of what took place, but of course the bravery of a lot of those young men that day is just really unmatched, really, when you think about it. You got to think about war in that sense. The things that men are able to do in those times, it's just unheard of, really, when you think about it. You almost can't believe it when you see what really took place that day. And we got a glimpse of that. By the way, the World War II survivors of that day said that the most accurate depiction of that day was in the Saving Private Ryan movie, the D-Day invasion of Normandy. And it's an intense thing to look at. It's an intense thing to endure. Again, I can't even imagine being there, seeing what was taking place. But obviously, God bless all those men that served that day. But on another note, I do want to tell you something, that since we're commemorating our military men, and today being the 59th anniversary of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, which gets really zero coverage anywhere in America. Most people don't even know about it. You're looking at your phone going, what the hell is he talking about? What's Gerace talking about today? Again, I see zero articles even read about it today. But 59 years ago, this attack from the Israelis, they decided to strike the USS Liberty inside the Mediterranean. And Paul Craig Roberts wrote a very great article summarizing everything that took place that day, and probably why it's been so hushed up about since then. By the way, there's some long documentary about it called Sacrificing Liberty. It's about 4 hours long. I've seen the BBC coverage of this documentary about this incident. There's only a couple out there, but you can find interviews of the surviving sailors that were there that day and what have you. But really, there's not too much about it. And because it's about our greatest ally, Israel, attacking the United States. So I think that probably plays a big role about that. But he entitled this article called "A Day of Infamy, June 8th, 1967, when Israel attacked the USS Liberty, causing 207 American casualties." Now, what took place that day, you ask? So they were in the Mediterranean. They were doing some reconnaissance, if I'm not mistaken. And again, this is a U.S. naval ship. It's marked. It's got the writing on the side of the ship, USS Liberty. So it shouldn't be confused with anything else. And nonetheless, the Israeli jet fighters made multiple runs over the ship, beginning around mid-afternoon. They had anti-personnel rounds, armor-piercing ammunition, napalm in some passes, hitting the ship. There was also 3 Israeli motor torpedo boats approaching at high speeds. They launched 5 torpedoes at the boat. And then they tried to come out and say that this was, they believed to be, an Egyptian ship. Even though it has an American flag on it, it has English writing on it, it was clearly labeled. The day was not, foggy or anything like that. It was a clear day. The boat is clearly, obviously marked. The Israeli aircrafts did, again, rotations over the ship earlier that day and didn't attack it, so they clearly knew who the ship was. But yet somehow they decided to go ahead and do this. One of the torpedoes struck on the starboard side, tearing a massive hole in the side of the ship and, of course, killing 25 men instantly, as the intelligence reports tell us. And here's the part that's crazy, too. The lifeboats were also fired upon with artillery and machine guns, which is a war crime, ladies and gentlemen. It's international law war crime. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So this is what the Israelis did to us. Again, our greatest ally that we're told ad nauseum did to us in 1967. How do you reconcile that, by the way? And by the way, the response by LBJ, who, again, was totally compromised, probably because he was stooping an Israeli Mossad agent, female Mossad agent, let me just make sure that's clear. But nonetheless, he was having an affair with a female Israeli Mossad agent. Could have been why. She could have had a lot of dirt on him. I don't know. We know he was a pervert and all that nonsense. I won't get into that. That's neither here nor there. But nonetheless, this is probably why he was reported, when he was told about this, that he didn't give a damn if the ship sank to the bottom of the ocean. So there you go. And instead of holding Israel accountable, he ended up doubling down and giving them more foreign aid. And that's just been a process that's gone on from president to president, more foreign aid going to Israel. Now, about 50 minutes after this attack, Israeli helicopters arrived, apparently as part of a follow-up or rescue inspection effort. Intercepted communications suggest that the attackers had not correctly identified the ship before or during the assault. I mean, this is just ridiculousness. Absolute ridiculousness. And by the way, the men that day have a much different story than what is obviously used to rewrite the history that day. They claimed it was a case of mistaken identity, believing the Liberty to be an Egyptian vessel. I mean, you can't believe this. You have clear U.S. markings on the ship. You have clear visibility that day. And again, as I told you before, you had prior friendly overflights earlier that morning. So what was the problem? What didn't they understand? This is what you got to ask yourself. And as a result of it, you had 34 American sailors killed. You had 173 wounded. It's unbelievable. And that's what happened that day. And again, you can watch the documentaries, you can listen to the men speak about what took place that day. Of course, you have people like Ben Shapiro trying to cover it up. Well, it was a case of mistaken identity. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Okay. So you approach a vessel with an American flag on it, you think, that's got to be an Egyptian ship. We got to attack it. Now, keep in mind, this was during the 6-Day War. And the likelihood of destroying this vessel was probably the result of sinking a U.S. ship to try to lure the United States into the war against Egypt. There you go. That's probably what it was all about. And of course, the ship did not sink, by the way. And of course, the men did have the ability to tell their stories about what took place that day. Now, the Israel lobby has such total control over the U.S. government that probably not even, again, in America's highest-ranking military officers could probably succeed in getting a truthful admission out about it today. Certainly even out at the time, it was difficult to do. A lot of it was hushed up and covered up. Paul Craig Roberts says that he used to write on every anniversary of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, but no Americans seemed to care, other than the surviving crew members, and of course, we the truthers, I added that part in there, that want to tell you exactly what happened, stay with the facts. And of course, those numbers get fewer and fewer every single year as more of these men pass. But, you know, we've got to think about where we are. What is our relationship with Israel today? And by the way, I'm fine with having diplomacy with other countries. I'm not against that at all. I believe in diplomacy. I believe in sitting down and communicating versus having all-out wars. And of course, funding wars. So I'm not opposed to having a positive relationship with the state of Israel. What I'm opposed about is the fact that, again, first of all, that this happened, and that nothing was done about it. Not a thing was... No one was arrested. No one was charged with this. Both sides did their reports, and they covered it up, and nothing was to happen about it. Nothing came from it. And now we've got President Trump, our treasonous Congress, trying to integrate the Israeli military with the U.S. military. Of course, in this 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, it's unbelievable. It's merging two countries' militaries together. Why does nobody else give a damn about that but me and maybe a couple other people in the media? I don't understand this. Again, criminalizing any negative reference to Israel? Where the hell's our freedom of speech in this country? I ask you. Now, of course, it'll be anti-Semitic very soon to even mention the USS Liberty. They don't want you talking about this. They don't want you knowing about this. But this did take place, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I say this to you not because I hate people that are Jewish or Israeli. I really don't. But I am telling you the facts because that's what matters. This is what's important, to know history, real history. Not made up garbage, but real history. And so on this day, I tell you this because this was obviously an attack on the USS ship. We lost American lives. We had others that were wounded. And nothing resulted in that. Nothing changed that relationship. We're told, greatest ally. I'll level with you for a second. I'll be very clear with you. The Iranian government has never, ever, of course, until this war began, that we started, by the way, has never attacked the United States and done anything like this before. In fact, I'm trying to think of another country that has done something like this. Out of the blue, that was obviously in good diplomacy with the United States, did this, and then nothing happened afterward. I can't find one single case, folks. LBJ was as corrupt as could be. Just keep that in mind, too. That's probably another reason why this took place. But my God, is it wrong to ask, where is President Trump's bona fides lie? I'm starting to question that more and more. I hate to say that, but this is the God's honest truth. I mean, most people have no idea this day took place in this country. A day where another country attacked a U.S. ship, tried to sink it, machine gunned our boys in lifeboats on the boat, and not a damn thing is said about it? And yet we're told this is our greatest ally. Shouldn't an ally, ladies and gentlemen, reciprocate whatever we give them and they give us? Shouldn't that be the relationship with an ally? I see none of this. I see it as a one-sided piece of God knows what. I don't even know what you'd call it. We know what AIPAC does. We know what the lobby does. They know how they buy things off. Certainly who's sitting in Congress right now. What, some 97%, 98% take money from AIPAC? We give them billions of dollars every single year of our taxpayer dollars. We fund a lot of their military pensions, their health care, their education. But we're told here in the United States we don't have money for all that. We don't have money for health care. Certainly not. I'm not saying even that's a good thing for the government to even be involved in that. That's my stance on that. But we're told we don't have enough for education in this country. We just can't do it. We can't fix the roads yet. We just don't have the money for it. We got to tax you a little bit more. Don't worry about it. And we'll fix it at some point, right? That's what they told us in California in 2018. Pass the gas tax. We'll fix those roads. How many billions of dollars they've taken in for that? And look at the roads. Still the second to worst in the country, ladies and gentlemen. But I digress, of course. But I just wanted to bring this up with you folks because, again, we're at war now again because of Israel. That's why we're at war right now with Iran. Just in case everybody didn't know that. You, of course, know that. You listen to my show and you understand exactly what's going on. But we're at such a troubling time right now, folks. We elected President Trump to, again, follow the Constitution, to fix our economy that Joe Biden had left us. And things seem to be going backwards. I had a lot of hope for President Trump this second term. He He governed very well. But, I say to myself now, where are we? What are we doing? Why are we in this war with Iran? Why are we even here? And the answers all point to Israel. That's why we're in this position. And why we're not reaching a peaceful negotiation with the country is because, again, of Israel. And their actions, again, yesterday, continue to foment this process of delaying any type of meaningful negotiation between the United States and Iran, which is what we should want. This is the Wall Street Journal. It says here, Iran and Israel ended in multiple exchanges of fire on Monday, but left open the possibility of resuming attacks that pressured President Trump's fragile Middle East ceasefire. We don't want a ceasefire. We want this to end. We want everything to pull out of the region. Vessels, move everything out. In fact, our bases are destroying the region. We might as well just leave those. It'll cost over $100 billion just to repair them. But Trump had intervened in this violent hours-long back and forth, saying Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting and declared that both countries wanted an immediate ceasefire. Now, whether or not that sticks, again, only time will tell, but as I've said to you before, Netanyahu, Israel, they've never met a ceasefire they've ever held. They didn't hold one in Gaza. They don't hold anything in the West Bank. They don't hold anything in Lebanon. They never honor these ceasefires or these arrangements in order to have one. And that's why Iran has come out and said, listen, number one on our list, one of the main reasons, of course, one of their provisions, is that the fighting has got to stop between Israel and Lebanon. That is on the table. That's before we even talk anything nuclear or anything regarding nuclear. The first way we end this war is, again, the release of the frozen assets to Iran that the U.S. has been holding for over 47 years now. They want their money back. They want the lifting of sanctions so their economy can, again, return to normal. Now, Trump has denied both of those right now. He told that to Kirsten Welker when he was sitting down with Meet the Press on Friday of last week that aired yesterday. But that's just to get Iran to the table and say, listen, we'll now negotiate because, again, you're showing good faith. You're lifting sanctions. You're, again, releasing our frozen assets. You're giving us our money back. It's not just you taking money out of the U.S. Treasury and giving it to Iran, which is how they try to portray certain things. But that's not what's taking place. They want the naval blockade to be done with. They want that to go away. So their ships are not circumventing all these vessels in the region. They don't want that. And they also want the fighting to stop between Lebanon and Israel. And, of course, Israel and Gaza. That's what the Iranians said. This is how you get us to the table. This is how we will reach a peace agreement. You have to show good faith in getting Israel to stop this. This is their aggression on the Lebanese. It is not Hezbollah fighting with Israel first. It was obviously Israel invading into southern Lebanon. It's obviously Israel, again, doing what they do, mowing the lawn inside of Gaza right now. And now they're coming out saying, we're going to take 70% of Gaza right now. This is what they're coming out saying, again, during a ceasefire. And we know people have been killed, at least some 900 since this so-called ceasefire. That sounds like a pretty crappy ceasefire, does it not? 900 people killed at least that are confirmed? Trump and Netanyahu and Kushner and Witkoff sit on a so-called board of peace, and this is it? Where the hell's the peace? I see none of it. And again, if I sound angry to you, it's because I'm over this nonsense. President Trump has said he tells Netanyahu what to do. Really? So then did you tell Netanyahu to strike inside of Lebanon over the weekend? Is that what you did? Or does he just do whatever the hell he wants to do? That's what it seems like to me. Is he going to call up Netanyahu again and say, listen, Bibi, we're not giving you any more military aid if you continue on with this. It'll be on your own if you want to continue on with this. We're letting the Iranians know we're cutting you off completely. We won't give you a dime. We won't give you a munition. We won't give you any support of any kind. We won't negotiate for you if you continue on with this. Has he said that? Has he done that? That's what Reagan did in the 80s. That's what Reagan did exactly. And guess what? It stopped the fighting. There you go. That's leadership for you. That's leadership. I don't think we'll see anything like that, of course, because the writing's on the wall, folks. Trump, obviously, again, either he is compromised or he simply will not have the ability to tell Netanyahu to stop this. Now, he can go on Truth Social post, both sides should stop this and that, but his rhetoric has really changed. His rhetoric has greatly changed since I've told you about the revelations I've heard. Again, I can't confirm it, but that the Iranians are very close to demonstrating that they have nuclear technology, that they have a nuclear bomb, that they're going to detonate it. Now, I've talked to some people about it, and they don't buy it. Again, I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's coming from reliable sources, from other reliable sources that have heard directly from the Iranians inside the Pakistani government. I'll just leave it to you as that. This is what I've heard. Again, it's not in the mainstream press. You're not going to hear it anywhere else, except probably my show and a couple others, where these excellent geopolitical strategists and insiders are speaking about this. Again, they're getting this information. They're relying it to us. They said that Iran is going to withdraw from the negotiations. That's pretty much happened. They're not talking directly to the United States. They're talking to the Pakistanis, but they're not talking to the United States anymore. They're not sitting down. They're not scheduling meetings. And again, they've made their points very, very clear as to what I just told you. If they come out this week, and this could happen, again, the fighting could resume at any time now between Israel lobbing missiles into, again, Lebanon, or again, Iran attacking northern Israel. It could happen today. It could happen right now as I'm talking to you. Everything's on the table at this point. But if the Iranians come out and say they are leaving the non-proliferation treaty, folks, I would say get ready for that demonstration to happen very, very soon. I believe that will happen very soon after they announce that. And again, I'm hoping it doesn't happen. But this is going to look awful for President Trump if this happens. And you've noticed he's dialed down the rhetoric quite a bit. Certainly about attacking Iran. Now, he's come on saying, as of last week, that he's not going to, again, lift the sanctions, which, again, Congress has to be involved in with that. Again, because most of Congress is unpaid for by Israel, so of course they're not going to do that. Why would they? I mean, what would they do without getting all that money? I mean, it's a lot of money, folks. There you go. And again, Trump's donors are the same exact way. A lot of them are, again, pro-Zionist. Again, you can be pro whatever the hell you want. I don't care. But my point is to you that this is who's leading Trump's decisions on this. Let's just be honest about it. That's the way it's working. So there's that. And of course, you have to understand, too, that now the Houthis have made an announcement that they're going to be resuming their fight against Israel as well. And the idea that the Bab el-Mandeb Strait could be closed, which would shut off lots of shipping, especially coming from, obviously, the Red Sea, coming through the Suez Canal, coming from the Saudi Arabians. That'll be, again, detrimental to them. And the Egyptians do not want this either, by the way. They understand this would totally cut off a huge flow of money coming into their country. They don't want that. And as I say this to you, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand exactly now where we stand with this. Where do we stand with this? Where is the next step here? If Trump is saying outright that he is not going to lift sanctions. He's not going to do anything to give them any of their money back. There's no path to a negotiation. There's no roads that lead to an end of this. Which then begs the question, is this going to turn out to be a forever war? Only time will tell, of course. We're only a couple months into this. But I worry very much, what is the next step here? Is it more escalation? Does the U.S. get involved at some point now? Again, everything is on the table. So I don't know if Netanyahu did this because he wants to see what Trump does, if he gets Trump to get back in the fight against Iran. Now, it was said that every missile that the Iranians sent out were intercepted by the by the Israelis, rather. I haven't heard of anything striking the ground, any casualties, so at least that's a positive effect by it. Trump has come out and even said the same thing. Nothing even hit. He said this according to reports, he said this to Bibi. Nothing is hit. Do not, again, go in and strike Iran. But everything's on the table. It's what Netanyahu wants to do. That's what it comes down to. Well, look at this. It says Israel also ended its attacks on Iran, but said it would continue to strike in southern Lebanon. Okay, then Iran's going to continue to strike you. They've come out and said, very much so, this is the path forward. This is what they're going to do. And, we talk about replacing the JCPOA with what? With what? We can't even sit down and negotiate with them. This is the problem with all this. There's no paths that lead to anything positive, unfortunately. And by the way, Trump, again, as I told you before, he sat down with Kirsten Welker before he stormed off, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, after he had quite a big meltdown. He said this regarding the JCPOA and, of course, Obama. Let's take a listen to clip 1.
Barack Hussein Obama signed the JCPOA. It was a horrible deal. Horrible deal. Listen to me. It was a horrible deal. It was a path to them getting a nuclear weapon. They were very close to having a nuclear weapon. I terminated the deal. Wait. Then I sent the B-2 bombers in about 9-10 months ago, and they totally obliterated the site, and I saved it. We had a choice. We could let them have a nuclear weapon, or we could go along and have some beautiful days. But they would have, it's a judgment. They would have used the nuclear weapon. And you know what? When people hear that whole scenario, when they hear me say Iran is going to have a nuclear weapon, and they're crazy, they say you're doing the right thing. I don't think it's you'll do polls because they're all fake polls anyway, especially yours. But you do polls. I just won a big election. And the reason I won an election is people have confidence in me. I have good judgment.
Okay, so there's a lot there to unpack, of course. First of all, no, they weren't on a path to getting a nuclear bomb. We know this through intelligence. We know this through, obviously, the Iranians themselves. They had issued 2 fatwas since 2003 saying they're not going to build a nuclear bomb because, again, it goes against their religion. I don't know how many times I could say this to you, but I'll say it to you again. The Iranians were not building a nuclear bomb. They had no intention of doing so. Now, obviously, I think things have changed since they started this war on February 28th. I think things have changed, especially in the leadership. So things have changed drastically. The fatwas are no longer in place. This is where we are now. This is what Trump did. Now, she goes on asking, well, why didn't you replace anything with the JCPOA? And he goes, well, it takes a while to do so. So there's no talks on the table from 2018 till right now. They're crazy. That's what his own words. He said the Iranians are crazy. So you're going to rip up the agreement that held them off for 10 years, preventing them from enriching uranium to a certain level, preventing them from building a nuclear bomb, allowed us to go in and, again, look at what they were doing, okay? Again, all IAEA reports show exactly they're not building a nuclear bomb. So we rip that up and replace it with absolutely nothing. And allegedly they're crazy. Does that sound like a good idea to anybody listening? At least keep the JCPOA in. Again, that was in place for 10 years. So 2025, okay, Trump comes in now and says, listen, we have to sit down and negotiate something much, much better. Okay, it's going to be better. It's going to be fantastic. It'll be the most fantastic piece of treaty ever signed with the Iranians. I mean, this is what, he says. But he replaced it with nothing, and we have nothing to work with. We have nothing that leads to peace, nothing that ends this conflict now. This is the problem with everything. So there's no path forward to stopping this conflict. I certainly don't see anything that would bring the Iranians to the table because, again, they're the ones that are winning. They're not the ones who struggle with their economy right now. Of course, their economy is obviously not bolstered up yet, but they're used to this before. They've seen worse than this. So when you hear Besson or Rubio, oh, their economy is in shambles right now, they're just hanging on. They're hanging on. Oh, okay. Even though we know they have all these different ways for transportation for their oil and what have you. We know they're getting help from both Russia and China right now. The Pakistanis have opened up trade routes going into Southeast Asia. I mean, they have ways to trade, folks, and they have ways to get, obviously, goods into their country with a lot of these BRICS nations. So, if the U.S. naval blockade stands, okay, they can go through the Caspian, they can go through the Belt and Road into China that way. They can go into the routes into Pakistan, into India, and again, all those countries in that region. It's not impossible for them. They can totally circumvent this naval blockade. It doesn't stop anything. Now, Iran's Joint Military Command said on Monday that it was halting offensive operations against Israel after President Trump called for both sides, again, to lay down their weapons. This was made in a public statement. I don't know who exactly said this, but this is what their news had said. And of course, it looks like Israel is saying they're going to do the same thing. But again, we've seen this before. They've agreed on June 1st, folks. Netanyahu said he will stop what's going on inside Lebanon. And look where we are now. The striking has resumed. Trump again took to Truth Social, saying Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. This is again after Iran sent 3 waves of ballistic missiles towards the Jewish states, while Israel and their forces targeted truck-based surface-to-air launchers and petrochemical facilities inside the Islamic Republic, again, which I don't think did very much because, again, we saw the resuming of these, again, waves of missiles coming from those exact locations where they were fired from prior. Within hours of, time. So again, I don't think it did much inside of Iran. But again, there was no immediate word of any casualties in any of these exchanges, thank God. We certainly don't want to see that at any of these sides. But how much longer can this go on for? That's my question to you. How much longer can we sustain this? This going back and forth, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. How long can that take place? Certainly, we're not opening it up yet. What's going on there? I thought we could open it up whenever we wanted to. Iran has no military. Iran has no navy. Their air force is non-existent. Trump told Kirsten Welker they're down to 20 to 21% of their missile capabilities. That's a bunch of nonsense. The Iranians have come out and said they have 122 or 120% of what they had at the start of this war. That means they're able to build these missiles that they have in a much quicker pace than, obviously, we do. And so, folks, that's where I leave you with this. Again, I don't have much more I could say on this. We have to see what takes place now, if anything actually gets solved. If negotiations move forward, I don't know. I don't think anybody can, but I have said this to you before, and I'll say it to you again, and I'll leave you with this. I do believe the worst has yet to come. I think things are going to get worse yet again. I think we'll see, again, the Houthis get involved. Hezbollah will continue to try to fight off the Israelis who have said they are not going to leave southern Lebanon, which I think is, again, the Iranians' position. They want the Israelis to leave and go back to their country, and that will stop the fighting there. But Netanyahu has said that's certainly not going to take place. They're in for the long run. And so long as Israel is attacking in southern Lebanon, taking territory, so long as people are getting killed inside of Gaza, then I think you'll see the Iranians retaliate. Every time Israel does something to those locations, I think you'll see the Iranians strike. So I don't know what Trump's next move is, how he could pressure Netanyahu to stop. I don't believe that's going to take place. I think Netanyahu understands very clearly once this conflict stops, certainly if he's unsuccessful in his bid again for prime minister, he goes to jail. He doesn't want that. Who would? But I think he smells the coffee here and understands he's got to continue the fighting. That's what's going to keep him certainly in power as time goes on. So I'm glad there's no casualties on any side, folks. Let's pray this ends sooner rather than later. But I want to move on to something else. Again, this is just, again, speaking of Trump's temperament, and again, his cognitive ability. I don't understand this, to be honest with you. This comes from Time magazine. It says President Trump walked off an interview with Kirsten Welker, aired on Sunday, when he challenged his, again, I'm just reading to you, his false claims about the California's ongoing elections and the January 6, 2021 attacks on the U.S. Capitol. When speaking with Welker, he was, again, I don't know why they were in a barn in Chippewa Falls. I think that's where Jack and Titanic was from, isn't he, folks? Chippewa Falls, right? Yeah, I think so. Can't you tell I'm a cinephile? Yeah, absolutely. I think he said he was from Chippewa Falls. That's funny. Okay, anyways, back to reality here. All right. He was talking about his proposal for the $1.8 billion in the anti-weaponization fund. It's been sidelined, of course, by those in Congress because, again, they control the purse of the Treasury. Trump can't just come out and say, I've allocated this money. He's got to get Congress to do so. So it took a little bit. It took a little while. But they were starting to talk about the fraud in California. Okay, and by the way, I'm not opposed to his position on this. I agree with him 100%. But then he starts just going off on this tangent about this and starts attacking her personally. I'm going to play it for you right now. It's a little long, but this was actually their exchange. And then he gets up and leaves afterwards and ends the interview. It's amazing to me. Let's take a listen to clip 2.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this crap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
On and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen, we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
And he walks off as he steps on his microphone. Okay. Now, he just goes on and on about this, which, again, I have no doubt, by the way, that there is fraud going on in California. I've lived it. I've seen it myself. So he's not wrong to call this out. Now, why he's arguing with Kirsten Welker, who doesn't run the elections in California, I don't know. But she asks him, she says, you've never, again, brought forth any evidence for this. Now, let's take a step back here. Let's look at what he's talking about here. Now, he's talking about California. We can look at the LA mayoral race, which, again, I think is ripe with fraud right now. I think anybody with a brain can realize this. So with the mail-in ballots, this is what's currently being published. Mail-in ballots arriving before Election Day, 38% go to, 38.1% go to Karen Bass, 27.9% go to Spencer Pratt, and Nithya Raman, 20%. Again, this is before Election Day. Okay, this is how the rate of ballots are coming in for these candidates. The mail-in ballots, though, after Election Day, and by the way, I think Pratt had a much closer, I think it was 34 to 30 on Election Day. And Raman was somewhere in the low 20s, I believe. Not even close to the either or. However, now that the polls have closed, the Election Day is over now, again, we're almost a week from it. The mail-in ballots now, after Election Day, Raman has 37% of the ballots coming in. That is a 17% surge after Election Day. Bass has 34.9%, a 3% drop, and Pratt has only 19%, a 9% drop. I mean, if you're in second place in a race and you're very close to the incumbent, and on that day, again, you're very close to that individual, And then all of a sudden, the polls close. These ballots now come in from God knows where, from God knows who. And that candidate who has distanced himself from the third place candidate is now trailing her after all these votes magically appear. So long as they have the date of the election on them. Those are the rules in California, folks. But here's my next point I want to ask to you. Again, I'm not saying Trump is wrong about this. I agree with him 100%. He's not wrong. But he was going on about we have the most crooked elections. We're like a third world country. Then why have you not, in your DOJ, he said he has evidence. He said he knows who has done it. He's arguing about the 2020 election. He's arguing about how the press is unfair to him. I'm not denying that part either. I think the press is unfair to him at certain times. Absolutely. Certainly during his first term. But here's the problem. What has your DOJ done about it? You've been president for 16 months now. Why have you done absolutely nothing about it? If there's voter fraud happening in California right now, why are we not auditing these machines? It's not a difficult process. All you have to do is take out the SIM card in them. SIM card, memory card, whatever they call it. Anyways, that's how they rig these machines. You take that out, and you can figure out how they have processed these votes. That's how you do these things. You can check voter rolls as well. Do people match where they say they live? Again, there's a process that goes along with it. But with these electronic machines, and by the way, California has them, you could easily go in and see how they rig this. And they can rig this. Because people have testified, computer programmers, and I've played them on this show before, they have said that they can easily go in and do this. This is how they can flip things, they can make it whatever they want, they can make it 51-49 for the candidate they want in a close race, they can do it every single time. And you wouldn't know unless you went in and did this forensic audit. So my question is to President Trump, he says that he's got the evidence, he knows who has done it. Then why has this person not been arrested? Or these people that are in charge of this, why have they not been arrested? Well, you could say, well, it's California's rules, they don't have to show an ID. Okay, fine. But you could still go in and prove that there's fraud. And if there's fraud, you could say, you know what, we're done with these electronic machines. We're done with these electronic machines. Look at the fraud. We're proving the fraud. It has nothing to do with being Republican or Democrat. Hey, maybe the Republicans use it too. We don't even know. Let's be realistic here. Both sides could be using this to their own advantage. But I think in a state where you have zero voter ID laws, where you don't have to show an ID, again, California, New York, Illinois, sound familiar? No photo ID in 14 states. And then it takes you this long to count these ballots? In a mayoral race, folks? Come on. But the problem is we're not doing anything about showing the fraud. Showing the fraud in person, showing exactly what's taking place, who's stealing what, who's in charge of these machines. And actually arresting people and holding them accountable with lawsuits, with our DOJ that Trump runs. Why is Todd Blanche not looking into this? Why didn't Pam Bondi look into this? This should be day one. If I knew that 2020 was stolen, I knew who did it, and it was just so blatantly obvious, day one of my next tenure, that would be my number one focal point. I would say, let's look at these machines. What is going on with these machines in these states? I want them right now. By the way, we can look at them too. Just because the state run the election. Here's what most people don't understand. Yes, the states run the elections. They pick the precincts and whatnot. But they have to follow procedure. They have to follow procedure. By the way, the federal government can come in and look at these machines. It's not unheard of. And we have a lot of congressional races that are going on right now that are afflicted with these machines. Are they being tampered with as well? See who gets through. California, by the way, has what's called a jungle primary. That means the top two vote getters could be two Democrats, could be two Republicans, could be two independents, an independent Republican, doesn't matter who it is. The top two vote getters are now in the general election. So Trump could look at these machines. It's not unheard of. Newsom is doing his damnedest to try to stop that from happening. But he really has no say in this. If there is fraud, the DOJ can look into it. So why are we not doing this, Mr. President? Get Todd Blanche on this. Get whoever the hell you want on this. I don't care who it is. Open up the machines in California. Show the voter fraud. Show how they're doing it. Arrest the people that are doing it and end the election. Actually, not the election. Electronic voting machines. Let's get some real results here. You can yell at Kristen Welker all you want. Again, I don't know why you're yelling at her. Her job is to ask you questions. If you think she's full of it, you can explain why she is. I have no problem with that at all. But she's trying to talk to you about something else, and you're going on about these election results. Then who have you arrested? Who have you gone after? And why haven't you? That's my question to you. You're in charge of the DOJ now, not Kirsten Welker. Kirsten Welker has nothing to do with what's in California right now. Now, she can carry water for them. But the burden of proof relies on us, folks, right? If I have a claim for you, and I tell you, hey, you got to believe what I'm saying, I've got to provide you with some evidence in order for you to believe me. Otherwise, you say, well, Gerace is just saying this. There's nothing that shows he's right. So the burden of proof is on us, we the Republicans, we the ones that are supposed to be following the Constitution, that believe in the values, that believe in honesty and discourse and free speech. It is on us to prove this. So let's prove it. We know we can prove it. We know they're full of it. So let's prove it in a court of law. Let's get it done with. And we know people have gone to jail for voter fraud. We know this obviously takes place. But this is all problematic, folks. Very much so problematic. And by the way, too, I'm looking at this in Slay News out of New Jersey. It says our New Jersey voter rolls have now been flooded with non-citizens for years. Some cast ballots is what the new records have revealed. So, again, you have a state like California. And by the way, LA has 1.2 million at least. I think that's a low number, too, by the way. At least 1.2 million illegal aliens residing somewhere in the county. Most of them probably in Los Angeles because, again, it's a sanctuary city. So they seek refuge there. They know they're not going to get hassled if they're here illegally. Because, again, the state of California is not following federal immigration law. They're not allowing the government to hold people accountable that are not supposed to be here. So LA is certainly ripe with fraud, certainly ripe with people voting that shouldn't be voting. And by the way, too, there's calls that the vote difference or the amount of votes that Nithya Raman has gotten now, yeah, it's 43,000. Guess how many homeless people live in Los Angeles alone in the state of California? About just over 43,000. Isn't that interesting, too? You go find someone on the street. You want a pack of cigarettes? Here, sign this ballot here. Throw that in there for you. Could happen, folks. It could happen. By the way, how do you register someone who has no address? That's what I want to know. How do you do that? It's amazing to me. Always is. But nonetheless, here we have public records now inside the state of New Jersey, obtained by the Republican National Committee and the New Jersey Republican Party, have uncovered multiple cases of non-citizens appearing on the New Jersey voter rolls. Some of these records are now indicating that non-citizens have even cast ballots in previous elections before being removed from them. So we see this time and time again. And Trump is right to want to pass the SAVE Act, but we have the evidence. If someone is on the voter rolls that should not be here, how did they get on there in the first place? Who allowed this to happen? So we need to go after the people that are doing this. If it's the people at the DMV, if it's people, part of the New Jersey Democratic Party that are allowing this through, if it's a certain individual leading the government, no one is above the law. So let's get to it. And again, these documents, they've been obtained through record requests sent to all 21 counties in New Jersey now, show numerous instances of non-citizens seeking removal from voter registration lists while pursuing U.S. citizenship. So in other words, they're trying to find a path to citizenship too, which they should not be able to do. This is a problem. This is a problem through and through, folks. It's not just in California or Illinois or New York. It's all over the place. But look at this. This is the best part. This is the kicker. This tells you exactly why Gavin Newsom doesn't want Trump looking into this. According to the records, most of the individuals were registered as Democrats. There you go, folks. There you go. That's why they don't want Spencer Pratt to lead or win this race. There you go. They don't want change. Which is funny, too, by the way. I had to say to this, referring back to the L.A. mayoral race. You have to have people that are upset about what Karen Bass did to the city. I mean, she destroyed the city. And again, I lived through it. She let the Palisades burn. She let parts of Malibu burn as a result of this, as a result of her actions. If people are upset about this, why would you vote? First of all, why would you vote for Karen Bass for anything? She has done absolutely nothing to fix Los Angeles. That's the first and foremost part. But why would you pick someone else who sits on the city council who is completely aligned with her in every single way in order to fix this? You wouldn't do that. You would cast your vote for Karen Bass. Because Karen Bass, like Nithya Raman, is a communist. She's absolutely a communist. They both are. Raman is a member of the Democratic Socialist of America. Again, communists. That's what they are. They believe in the same exact ethos. This is who they are. So why would you vote for the same person when you already have that in Karen Bass? It doesn't make any sense. Absolutely doesn't make any sense. So there's that problem. So the people that want change, what do you think they're going to do? Nithya Raman, who sat on the LA City Council for 6 years and has done what, by the way? Solved homelessness? Doubtful. Hasn't. The population's gone up. Solved crime and law and order? Of course not. Still running rampant. I mean, thank God we have Nathan Hochman, who, again, at one point was a Republican. But it looks like Bill Asaley and he are trying to get into this a little bit. By the way, I don't know if the sheriff would do it. I know he's a Democrat. But this is how you solve these problems. You look into them. That's how you do them. So Trump should be trying to, again, see if they can do something on their end to fix this problem that is so rampant. And by the way, this should not be happening in the freest country and the wealthiest country that has a constitution on the planet. Shouldn't be happening like this. Shouldn't be this blatant. So there's my stance to you on that. Anyways, let's move on, folks. And here we have a story unfolding from USA Today. And it talks about the U.S. boats that have been struck largely in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific now that have said now that over 200 people now have been killed. And the service members are now in question. And it says here that obviously the legal experts and the former military lawyers now broadly agree that this has been illegal military orders that have taken place now, and that the service members should refuse to follow. Now, we heard this from people in Congress. Right? Remember they came up and said, you do not have to follow an unlawful command, right? And then everyone got upset about it. They questioned people, specifically, what's his name in Arizona? I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now. It'll come to me in a moment. But there were several of them. They were all Democrats, and they all said, we served at one point, blah, 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 and, you shouldn't follow an unlawful order. And everyone got upset about that. They thought they were telling service members to simply defy the president's commands or the generals or whomever it may be. Now, while I didn't appreciate what they did, again, I don't know why they need to already say this, because every Marine, every soldier is already spoken to and taught this in their training. They're told not to follow an unlawful command. So in other words, if, for instance, like we saw, if two people that you are seeking out in a war are clinging to wreckage in the sea, you don't go in and you shoot them to death. Or you bomb them again. You hit them with a double tap strike and kill them. There are rules to warfare, and that violates international law. Look what I just told you about the USS Liberty. If people are in lifeboats, you don't machine gun them because, again, they are out of the fight. And once someone is out of the fight, once somebody has surrendered, you don't go in and kill them. Those are the rules of war, folks. We have them. Now, they get followed, but we have them. So now the question begs, what happens next? Now, there's no record of troops refusing to follow these orders. At least a handful of service members have now been grappling with the question, have sought the legal advice, though. But what happens if, for instance, if President Trump loses in the midterms and we have a Democrat-controlled House and Senate now? That's a reality that could happen if he doesn't start to turn things around. Certainly his polling is very, very low. The problem we face, though, What about these people that follow through on some of these unlawful commands by good old Pete Hegseth? Oh, yeah. What happens then? What happens to them now? Now, we can be told that they're trying to bring drugs in the country. Okay, you can make that assertion. But that doesn't mean you just simply bomb them and blow their ship up. You have to follow an semblance of the law. So what do I mean by this? So in other words, let's say, for instance, if any of these Venezuelan boats were coming to the United States with drugs, which we know, again, very, very rare anything from Venezuela enters the United States directly. Again, it's not even on a blimp on the screen. You still have to follow international law because you have sought them out in international waters. You sought them out in the Caribbean, which, again, we don't control. It's not in our water. It's not our territorial waters. So you can't do that. Now, we've blown up several of these boats. Again, we've killed over 200 people. You violated international law in and of itself. Even if there were drugs on that boat, you have violated international law. You can't get around that. And so I read this, and we talk about the drug trade as law enforcement issues now. They've talked about what's going on with the Coast Guard interdicting boats between, trying to bring them into the country and what have you. Fine, that's fine, but you arrest these people. You detain the boat. You detain the people. You detain the drugs themselves. Now, again, the Trump administration has released no evidence of any of the suspected so-called narco-trafficking boats as carrying these drugs into the United States. Some of these boats can't even reach the United States. And I gave you the example, too, that John Kiriakou has stated, that, for instance, a Trinidadian fisherman, he was missing, and his foot and boot washed up on shore in Trinidad, and the family wanted answers about what took place. How did this happen? What happened to him? So there's lots of things that are going on now that we have done, and we need to acknowledge this. And again, we need to follow the Constitution and the rule of law, which, again, any international treaty is ratified by our U.S. Senate. That makes it the law of the land. That means we have to follow the law. So when people tell you there's no, international law, who cares, doesn't really matter, it does matter. Because there are ways in order to do this. And now we have family members of victims now filing a federal lawsuit naming their relatives whom they allege were murdered by the United States. I imagine this Trinidadian fisherman would probably be one of them. But that's just one of many examples. But you have these small boats. There's no way they're tracking themselves 1,500 miles to the U.S. shore. Certainly not in any capacity. We know most of the drugs, over 90% of the drugs that come in this country come by Mexico. That's just the truth of the matter. Again, you can look at intelligence, information about this. This is how it works, folks. And now the Trump officials now continue to say that the attacks were lawful. Again, they're not. At a June 2nd Senate budget hearing, Secretary of State, he was a senator, just like he is a DJ, and of course the National Security Advisor, soon to be Viceroy of Venezuela and hopefully Cuba, as he hopes, said every boat strike has a legal officer on deck that is to make a determination about whether or not the call is legal or not. Now, again, how you strike a ship that is not attacking you, that you have not searched, that you just blow up, is legal is, again, something else. I don't know what you would call it, but again, we talk about legality. We talk about following the Constitution. How do we do this? Now, the Pentagon referred to USA Today's question to U.S. Southern Command, which oversees the military operations in South America and the Caribbean. And they said in a statement, all operations are conducted deliberately and lawfully, in full compliance with the United States and international law. Well, that's amazing. Where's the due process? That's my question to you. Where is it? Nowhere to be seen. That's all the time I have for you today, folks. But don't worry, I'll have more for you tomorrow. As always, make sure you're staying prepped as always. Food, water, medicine, fuel, anything to be self-sufficient. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dure Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.